Shalom. Today we are going to be doing Genesis chapter 6. So let's get started. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 1 reads, "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them." So we see here that the inhabitants of the earth were increasing at that time and daughters were being born. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 2 reads, "That the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair. And they took them wives of all which they chose." Who are the sons of the Most High? This is a very broad question because there is Adam who is his son, the Messiah who is also his son, Satan who is an angel which is also his son, and Israel his people who are also his firstborn. Shall we provide precepts now? Okay, so to prove that Adam is his son, we go to Luke chapter 3 and verse 38, which reads, "Which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God." So here we see that Adam is indeed a son of the Most High because the Most High created him in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7, which reads, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul." I also said that the Messiah is his son. We can find this in Mark chapter 1 and verse 1, which reads, "The beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." You can also find this in Luke chapter 8 and verse 28, where the devil calls him the Son of the Most High, and at that time he was also human. Now we move on to Satan, who is an angel and the son of the Most High. We can find this in Job chapter 2 and verse 1, which reads, "Again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord." So we see here that Satan is indeed a son of the Most High. You can also find that he is an angel in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 14, which reads, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." And lastly, Israel is also his firstborn according to Exodus chapter 4 in verse 22, which reads, "And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn." You can also find this in Hosea chapter 11 and verse 1, which reads, "When Israel was a child, then I loved him, and called my son out of Egypt." So we see here that the Most High have at least 4 sons in the Bible so far. So which sons of the Most High actually saw the daughters of men? In order to rule out some options, we must consider the times in which this could have happened. At that time the Messiah was not born yet, and Israel was not formed as a nation yet. So we are left with the last 2 options, the sons of Adam and the angels such as Satan. Since we know that we are the children or offspring of Adam and by extension Abraham, I ask you, was there ever a time where you saw marriage with another nation resulted in making a giant? Interracial marriages happen every day, yet I don't see giant children or giants on a whole being formed. Do you? Leave your answers in the comments. So then it has to have something more than just interracial marriage to make a giant, right? Let's try the last option, angels, which are the sons of the Most High. But what are angels? According to Psalms chapter 104 in verse 4, who makes his angels spirits, his ministers of flaming fire. So here we see that angels are spirits. You can also find this in Hebrews chapter 1 and verse 7. Now we must ask ourselves, how exactly can a spirit impregnate a woman? That's impossible, right? Think again. The Bible talks a great deal about possession, whether we want to call it that or not. It is essentially when a spirit or entity enters into a host, which is someone's body. There are many examples in the Bible where this has happened. Examples include 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 14, which reads, "But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him." You can find more examples of this in 1 Samuel chapter 18 and verse 10, 1 Samuel chapter 19 and verse 9, Luke chapter 22 and verse 3, and Matthew chapter 9 and verse 32. Now that we have proven that possession exists, we know that the angels had to now enter a host to make offspring possible. So let's find out who they entered. According to the Bible, the descendants of giants were large beings like Goliath, which is a prominent character in the story of David and how he became king. But if we take a closer look at his descent, we will see that he was of the Philistines. You can find this in 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 4, and also verse 49. And since we know that the male carries the seed and determines the descent of a child according to Ezra chapter 2 and verse 59, 1 Ezra chapter 5 and verse 36 to 39, We know that the hosts that the angels chose were of the Philistines. Now what is a giant according to the Bible? As we can see in scriptures like Numbers chapter 13 and verse 33, Deuteronomy chapter 3 and verse 11, 2 Samuel chapter 21 and verse 16, these giants were humans that were big in height and stature than the average person. So we now understand that angels entered the Philistine hosts or men, and took wives of the daughters of men which were also humans, which resulted in large persons or giants upon the earth. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 3 reads, And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So here we see the Most High cuts down the lifespan of man to 120 years. Back then men, including giants, lived up to 900 and something years, so this was the main reason why the Most High decreased it. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 4 reads, There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So here we see that the angels who entered Philistine hosts came together with the human women to create offspring that became very large in stature, and they were men known by all. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 5 reads, And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So here we see that the Most High looks on the heart, as stated in previous chapters, and man's heart thought only evil constantly. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 6 reads, And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So here we see what it means to repent, which is to regret and be sorry, or grieve that you have made a decision, which is what the Most High expresses here. Precept, 2 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 9 reads, Now I rejoice, not that ye were made sorry, but that ye sorrow to repentance, for ye were made sorry after a godly manner, that ye might receive damage by us, in nothing. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 7 reads, And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man, and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air. For it repenteth me that I have made them. So here we see that the Most High makes a decision to destroy all that he created. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 8 reads, But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. What is grace? Grace is the saving or finding favor in something or someone, according to Genesis chapter 19 and verse 19, which reads, Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. So here we see grace means to save a life. You can also find this in Genesis chapter 47 and verse 25, and Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. And where grace means to show favor, you can find this in Esther chapter 2 and verse 17 and Tobit 1 and verse 13. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 9 reads, These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. So this is saying these are the years of Noah, and he was a just man, meaning he was upright, according to Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 27, which reads, An unjust man is an abomination to the just, and he that is upright in the way is abomination to the wicked. Also Ezekiel chapter 18 and verse 5 says, But if a man be just, and do that which is lawful and right. And what does it mean to be perfect? 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 61 reads, Let your heart therefore be perfect with the Lord our God, to walk in his statutes, and to keep his commandments, as at this day. So we see here that Noah was upright in his ways, and he kept the commandments of the Most High, and he kept his statutes and laws in order to walk with the Most High. Check out 1 Kings chapter 8 and verse 25, and 2 Chronicles chapter 6 and verse 16 for clarity. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 10 reads, And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Precept Genesis chapter 5 and verse 32 reads, And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 11 reads, The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. What does corrupt mean? Well, according to Deuteronomy chapter 9 and verse 12 it reads, And the Lord said unto me, Arise, get thee down quickly from hence. For thy people which thou hast brought forth out of Egypt have corrupted themselves. they are quickly turned aside out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten image. So we see here to be corrupt is to turn aside out of the way which the Most High commands. You can also find this in Deuteronomy chapter 31 and verse 29. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 12 reads, And God looked upon the earth, and, behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. So here it says that the Most High looked on the earth and saw that all men had turned aside out of the way of which he commanded them. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 13 reads, And God said unto Noah, The end of all flesh is come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them. And, behold, I will destroy them with the earth. So here the Most High is speaking to Noah, telling him that he is going to destroy all flesh with the earth because of the violence, meaning sins in which they all have committed. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 14 reads, Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Room shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. So here we see that Noah was commanded by the Most High to create a boat, meaning ark of timber or cedar, meaning wood from trees, and to cast it inside and outside with pitch, and make rooms in the boat. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 15 reads, And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. So here we see that the Most High is telling Noah the measurements of the boat and what size he wants it to be. What is a cubit? According to the Bible, a mountain is 15 cubits high, so just imagine the length of 1 cubit out of that same mountain. You can find this in Genesis chapter 7 and verse 20. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 16 reads, A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above. And the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof. With lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. So here we see the Most High is asking Noah to build the boat with 3 floors and a window above. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 17 reads, And, behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life, from under heaven. And everything that is in the earth shall die. So here the Most High is saying that he will bring rain upon the earth, and it will kill all living things in which he put the breath of life, in other words the Spirit. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 18 reads, But with thee will I establish my covenant. And thou shalt come into the ark, thou, and thy sons, and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. So here we see Noah and his family were granted grace from the Most High, for the Most High wanted to start an agreement, meaning covenant, with Noah, so he told him and his family that they would be in the ark. Covenant means agreement according to Isaiah chapter 28 and verse 15 and 18, which reads, 15. Because ye have said, We have made a covenant with death, and with hell are we at agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come unto us, for we have made lies our refuge, and under falsehood have we hid ourselves. 18. And your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, then ye shall be trodden down by it. So here we see covenant means agreement. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 19 reads, And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Okay, so here we see that Noah was being commanded by the Most High to bring the living things such as animals into the boat, and he wanted them by pairs of male and female. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 20 reads, Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. So here we see that the Most High wanted the birds, cows, sheep, snakes, dogs, and insects, male and female, to come to Noah in order to preserve their life. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 21 reads, And take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee. And it shall be for food for thee, and for them. Here the Most High asks Noah to put aside food for himself, his family, and for the animals. Genesis chapter 6 and verse 2 reads, Thus did Noah. According to all that God commanded him, so did he. So it says that Noah listened and did all that the Most High commanded. Did you enjoy the study? Let me know in the comments. Shalom for now.